I'd like to share my secret to success. When was the last time you wrote down, typed up, or recorded your goals? If you're anything like me, you did it once or twice in school. Perhaps a small handful of times during your free time. And maybe you've thought about them when prompted by a YouTube video or podcast. Oddly enough, whenever we contemplate our goals, the process of recording them is followed by a burst of motivation. We're clear in our intent and driven to improve ourselves. We recognize that we aren't happy with where we are, and we desperately want to change our life circumstances. We want to be wealthier, healthier, more successful, more confident, and more emotionally stable. We know we want more for ourselves, and we're dedicated enough to the desire for change that we write out what we envision for yourselves. And yet, without fail, weeks and months pass, and we find ourselves in the same circumstance, under the same stresses of life, feeling the same dissatisfaction. Why? Well, answer this question for me. After you write out your goals, you pin your sheet of paper to your door. After you send the file to your phone for easy access. After you record yourself speaking your goals into existence using a voice recording application. How many times do you reflect upon what you've written? How often do you read over your work and reintroduce your desires into your mind? How often have you taken the time to get those wishes out of you, only to forget to read over them the very next day? Or worse, simply put the task off for later, until later turns into tomorrow, next week, next month, next year. I've realized in my life that while I always write my goals and dreams out on paper, after my initial motivation dies out, I lose my way and I revert to my previous state of stagnation. I've always assumed that this meant there was something wrong with me. I wasn't writing my goals deeply enough. I wasn't writing them down in the right way. I wasn't writing down my actual goals, but instead perhaps just hobbies and minor passions of mine. I tried to rationalize anything and everything for why writing my goals down didn't work. Then, after trying something different, I realized what the problem was. You see, the reason so many people fail at achieving their desire, their goals, and their dream is that when they get that initial burst of motivation and inspiration, they go through the cycle of writing out their goals, planning their day, and executing what's necessary to achieve their ambitions. However, once they get started, they foolishly tell themselves that they'll be able to maintain their progress off that initial burst of motivation and inspiration. We all already know that motivation and inspiration don't last, and yet we forget that when moving toward our desires, inevitably, life circumstances begin to arise, because life doesn't pause for anybody. Issues at home, struggles with school, fights in relationships, personal obstacles, and self-doubt, all those things begin to arise in our lives. And along with our initial focus on our goals, we have to look and focus on all these other things going on in our life. The focus isn't definite. The focus must be reapplied and recentered. Otherwise, it's split up and taken by all the other distractions that go on in our lives until we've completely lost it to everything else that has nothing to do with our initial goal. That's why even when your goal to eat healthily is slightly in your mind, as you pull into that McDonald's drive-thru, you still go along ordering fast food. Your focus is split, you're distracted, and because of this, you don't have that initial strength you once did. And why is your focus split from what it once used to be? Because you haven't reflected on your goals since you wrote them down 3 days ago. What changed my life was after taking another late night to write out all my goals. I didn't immediately try planning my next day, an entire week, or an entire month. I didn't focus at all on what I needed to cut off of my life or what routine I needed to implement after waking up the next day. I committed to reflecting on what I wrote, twice a day, every day, for the next 7 days. Nothing else, because nothing else was necessary. I already knew from experience that I was capable of starting a workout routine, sticking to a strict diet, or following a study plan. My issue was sticking to their long term and maintaining discipline. So, I tried something I'd never done before. I didn't wake up the next day and go to the gym. I didn't go to the kitchen and make a healthy breakfast, and I didn't write down a time to start studying for classes. When I woke up, I did just one thing. I read over my goals. The rest of the day, I was free to do whatever I wanted. That night, again, I just did one thing. Read over my goals again. I did this every single day, twice a day, for 7 days straight. After the 7th day, I noticed something. My goals were always at the forefront of my mind. I was always thinking about them, and because I was always thinking about them, my actions began to align with them almost automatically. I began eating healthier by default, and more importantly, I bought healthier foods without thinking about it. I began getting gym clothes ready the night before, something I'd never done before because I just knew I needed them in the morning. I began reading and studying more often because I knew studying was leading me toward my goals. Things began becoming more and more automatic. Retaining focus is the most beneficial thing you can do when it comes to following through on your goals. Without doing this, no matter how strong the initial motivation, you'll become more and more distracted until you're no longer following the path of your goals, but instead one of the many paths of distraction that opened up to you. Take control of your focus, and everything else will seamlessly follow behind you.